you for joining us today. We're down at Marston Vale. We're planting 250,000 trees for the Trees for Climate Fund. I'm here today with Peter from Tubex, and we'll be talking about their new nature guards. For our audience who might not be familiar with you or Tubex, could you briefly introduce yourself and give us a snapshot of what Tubex is all about?
Hi, my name's Pete Stevens, Business Development Manager for Tubex Tree Shelters. In a snapshot, what do tree shelters do? They allow very small baby trees to thrive, ensuring they don't get eaten and ensure that they can get through the establishment period and go on to then be a successful tree.
Great. And so how do Tubex biodegradable tree shelters differentiate from other bio-tree guards in the market?
So Tubex Nature has been developed in relatively recent years. We've had 2 full seasons of commercially supplied product. The one in front of me here was from last year, 2022 season. And what makes them different? Well, first thing is that we manufacture these shelters from tried and tested technology based on the twin wall design that Tubex have been manufacturing for nearly 40 years. So what makes it different? Well, it's essentially the fact that we're using a bio-based polymer and a fully biodegradable product, but we're drawing from that experience from several decades. We can certainly manufacture in very large quantities and we can relatively quickly manufacture too. So I suppose the simple answer to that is ensuring that there are sufficient quantities of the material to satisfy the demand in the market.
And we were talking earlier about the fact that they are coming off the same lines as the regular Tubex shelters. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. So the vast majority of the product which we currently manufacture are made from polypropylene predominantly, which is a polymer. It's a thermoplastic and has been made for decades. So we have numerous lines which currently use that material to manufacture the twin wall shelters that have again been made for decades. So currently what we have is one dedicated line which manufactures the relatively new Tubex Nature products and uses a biopolymer in order to do that. So as we start to see the demand increase, we simply can switch the amount of those lines which are dedicated to our recyclable material, the polypropylene based material, across to the biodegradable biopolymer.
So it allows you to be quite swift on your feet then to respond to the market demand.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there are some differences in processing. Certainly the past 2 years where we have been commercially supplying these products has shown, whilst we tried to replicate and use the existing well-established design, we have had to make some changes because ultimately the biopolymer does perform slightly different. It does have slightly different properties, so we've had to make some slight adjustments in both the processing and in the finished product.
So following up from this, what are the notable challenges that developing a product that's both protective and biodegradable have been?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that is one of the biggest challenges with manufacturing a degradable material, because the moment you manufacture it and you produce it, it starts to degrade. And certainly in terms of biodegradability, there are many variables that affect it. The amount of moisture, the weather conditions, the site conditions, so be that the gradients, the slopes, the soil, the type of soil, the type of organic material that's in the soil. So many different variables. But ultimately, when you're dealing with a biodegradable material, as soon as you start to manufacture it, it will degrade in an environment where you've got the right conditions. So it's been a real challenge to ensure that we can get sufficiently long enough lifetime to ensure the product stays intact, protects the tree through that establishment period, Obviously the target is always 5 years. We're currently reasonably comfortable with saying 3 to 5 years for this material and for these shelters. We're trying to make that material last as long as is needed, but then we want to ensure that it fully biodegrades and doesn't just break up into small fragments, but actually biodegrades. So yeah, that's difficult, and actually you cannot do it in every situation because you can't predict all of those different variables. So we are continuously improving both the formula and the design based on feedback that we see as the years go on.
Because this is second generation, what are the improvements that, or from the feedback that you got last year, that you've done on this year's product?
It's a good question. So in this season, which is 2023, we've done some improvements to the way we process this biopolymer, which has meant that we end up with a product which is a little bit more robust. We've made a lot of investments in terms of our manufacturing equipment, which ensures that we get a much cleaner cut at the top, a better formed flared rim to ensure that there's less risk of stem abrasion as the trees emerge out of the tube. We've made some changes to the actual structure and design of the tubes. So the area where the tube fixes, where the tie points are, has been reinforced. So there should be considerably less risk of the tie points breaking through the material. And also what we've done is we've done a lot of research to give us an indication of how this material will perform with putting certain additives in to make it degrade quicker, or certain additives to make it delay that degradation process. So we've done a lot of research in that area, and what we will be doing is putting in some additional materials that will help the material last a little bit longer. We're certainly very encouraged to see that biodegradation is occurring, but we want to ensure that that happens ideally after a period of about 5 years, to ensure that the shelter is performing through that establishment period.
How's the market reception been for biodegradable shelters, especially from the forestry sector? Like, do you see an interest in it? Are people asking and wanting it more?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly there's considerable amount of concern generally about plastics in the environment, and certainly single-use plastics and plastics that are left and break down. So we certainly have seen, as I suppose, a knee-jerk reaction to that, an interest in fully biodegradable materials. The flip side of that is that actually standard polypropylene Tubex shelters are fully recyclable, and certainly a lot of independent studies has suggested that with a relatively high recycled content that Tubex recyclable shelters have, if we can get those shelters back and recycled, actually the environmental impact can actually be lower than if we produce a make for waste material or product that then is actually produced but then just simply left to degrade. So yeah, there's certainly a lot more interest. There has been a lot more interest, but unfortunately there isn't yet the perfect solution, because ultimately we're looking for something that lasts for 5 years and then suddenly essentially disappears, but in reality we can't do that. There's too many variables. Is there a future where all of the established methods we use for growing trees and establishing new woodlands using fully biodegradable materials? I think that's perhaps a utopia, but there's many commercial pressures which might make that quite challenging. I think certainly there's always a balance between what is the best commercial solution, what's the most cost-effective solution, and what is the best long-term solution for the environment. And certainly there's a lot of research still going into this. We're looking at it in different sites, and it does depend on different locations, but ultimately I think that going forwards will be the space for both. So where your sites are in relatively easy to reach areas, where they're not perhaps really restricted access, and you can go back and retrieve those tree shelters and recycle them. Certainly the studies we've seen so far suggest that that is actually the best environmental solution. So yes, I think going forwards we will see an increase and an interest in the market for biodegradable products, but we don't at the moment anticipate that it's likely they will entirely substitute the need for a much more durable recyclable shelter like Tubex currently manufacture.
Because you get to close that loop with the standard if it's recycled, which not only gives a long-term protection for the trees but also an environmental solution.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of focus on manufacturing generally about closed loop manufacturing, so essentially rather than a make to waste, but is essentially reclaim that material and reuse it again. Now we do acknowledge there's an awful lot of work to be done, but Tubex has spent quite a lot of effort, time and resource over the past 2 years establishing its recycling scheme and expanding that recycling scheme, and we're certainly committed to do that, and certainly, as I say, the independent studies we've seen so far suggest that that is actually the best environmental impact so far, providing those tubes are collected and can be recycled and used then to make new shelters in the future. So essentially closing the loop and ensuring that we are reusing that material rather than just seeing it go to waste.
For our viewers who are passionate about sustainability and reforestation, how can they get more information about your product line?
So there's a very comprehensive website which is tubex.com.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the time.